Hello there. Welcome to the Amma Manson Show. So, hopefully, you are not a stranger here. But what goes on here is education, definitely some empowerment. We add humor, information, and just a good vibe generally. It is not just a talk show, it's a live show. We talk about life, we unpick life, we find solutions to the things that stress us in life, and we make progress together. It is the Amma Manson Show, and my name is Amma, your girl, your educator, your motivator, and I kick your hind wherever we need to. Enjoy, invite other people to join in, and hopefully, you have a wonderful, wonderful experience on today's show. Let's get straight into things.
Well, hi there. Hello, everybody. It's good to have you. It's a little bit of a surprise because I told you it was a surprise interview, but I think it's a surprise worth the effort. I have a guest, and he is one of the key characters I want to speak to because he understands an awful lot about our political terrain. He is, I'll let him introduce himself. I think it's more suitable when a guest tells you the way they want you to get to know him. If you know who he is and you think you can guess who he is, go right ahead. But hi, Franklin.
Hi, Emma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I certainly could be better, but thank you. Thanks for asking. I hope you are well.
I am well. I am well. It's really good to have you. Thank you so much for coming. Franklin, some people might or might not recognize you. So would you please take a minute or two to tell them who you are, the way you want my audience to know you?
Well, thank you very much. I'm grateful to be here. My name's Franklin Kujo. I'm a Monday born. That's why I'm called Kujo. Many people did not situate me properly as to where I come from because of my surname. I should have been Aglotete, but strangely, I don't use Aglotete, which is my dad's name. I use Kujo the day I was born. So, well, I run a think tank called Imani Center for Policy and Education. What we do is to research economic trends, and try to understand what the trends are telling us and share the results as widely as possible with everybody who matters. We do we sometimes do vested interest analysis as well to know exactly who are behind all kinds of projects and programs and policies, the good and the bad. But typically we do value for money analysis. So we conduct value for money analysis, cost benefit analysis on most government programs, projects, and policies, with a view to ensuring that we understand the systemic nature of whatever they are trying to solve. So typically, that is what Imani does. If everybody wants to know much more about Imani, they can go onto our website, imaniafrica.org. We've been around for almost 17 years, and within that period, we've won a number of accolades, local and international. International, we've been ranked for the successively 8 good years now. There's only one ranking entity in the world that ranks influential think tanks. We've been ranked the most influential think tank in Ghana for the past 8 years, and we've been ranked twice influential in sub-Saharan Africa, twice, twice third in Africa, and then fourth in Africa, fifth in Africa once. So over the last couple of years, at most 10 years, we've been in the top five most influential think tanks ranked on the continent and in the top 100 as well. So I'm sure as the conversation travels, if there are any questions about the money, I'll be willing to answer them. Thank you.
Yes, there'll be plenty of questions about Imani. I know one of the first ones we will get is what is a think tank? It's confusing. What's a think tank? What is a think tank?
Well, a think tank is essentially made up of a group of people who may be academics, who may be what I call entrepreneurs, idea entrepreneurs, but also quite motivated to as it were, become the middle, play the middleman's role between academia and the laity. So essentially, what I mean is that my understanding of a think tank is to be able to bring expert knowledge, decipher that knowledge, and explain it in such a manner that the average Joe would understand. Otherwise, if my dictionary, if you're not communicating policy and its understanding in a 1,000 word article, you have no business being a think tank. But of course, that's not just what we do. That qualifies as a think tank. You also would have to write papers in journals, academic journals, and what have you. So it's an assemblage of experts, people who are united in with a vision to change the status quo. There are various kinds of think tanks. I mean, there are think tanks that focus on just single subjects.
Mhm.
There are think tanks that focus on a multiplicity of subjects. We are quite multidisciplinary in nature. We have four centers: Center for the Study of Energy and Natural Resources. So we look at oil and gas issues and natural resource issues there. We have the Center for the Study of Technology and Innovation. So we tend to look at development within the tech space, the mobile telephony space, and indeed any applications that are tech-based that are supposed to make our lives worth living. Then we have the Center for Economic Policy and Political Affairs, which tends to look more at economic policy analysis. We do budget analysis. We try to understand whatever government projects that have consequence, that have a bearing on the economy. We tend to analyze them. So when you hear us go after big ticket transformational projects like the CDB loan under the NDC or the Commander Sugar Factory or Kelny GVG under this government or the electoral commissions for power. These are all analysis that are done with a set view that once they have an impact on our economy, we should be able to make those analysis. The Center for um, social policy. So we tend to look at education reform, healthcare reform, and what have you. So we work with a broad array of experts and very knowledgeable people. So sometimes you hear in Ghana, we are jack of all trades, and I feel that is a very illiterate view of what think tanks really do. I mean, there are think tanks around the world, like the Indian think tank called ORF, which we currently have a relationship with, which does so many things. You'll be surprised. Security to whatever, every subject, energy, environment, and what have you. As long as the think tank has cast itself in that particular mode, it should be able to do so. Also. And of course, it doesn't mean that only one person would have to be promoting those ideas anyway. So that's what the think tank is. There are, at the last count, the global think tanks that are ranked is about 8,600 think tanks. In Africa alone, there are about 640 think tanks that have been counted. So it gives you a perspective if we are ranked as in the top five consistently in the last 5 years that we've been ranked. And these think tanks are focused on several all manner of subjects. By the way, we are in the very few category of think tanks that tend to take a look at a much broader uh, has a much broader approach. And it's simple. We've just developed a set of tools which we call basically market oriented tools, which enables us to be able to, which enables us assess, do the value for money analysis, cost benefit analysis, as I told you, and sometimes vested interest analysis. I can promise you that we know who is behind every bad deal in this country. We know, but we typically don't publish that because we do not want to spend our
Oh
days
dear.
and in our costs. So you always find us
Oh
look.
dear. Right, guys, can you hear me? Hi, Franklin. Are
I
you
can
back?
hear you.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, I lost you for a few seconds there. Please continue. I thought I had lost you.
Yes, as I was saying, you typically would hear people say that this is a one-man think tank, and because of that, hold on, I'm trying to start your video on Facebook. I don't know what's in Sub-Saharan Africa twice. Okay. I lost you for a few seconds there. Please continue. All right, that's fine. I thought I had lost you. Yes, Yes, as I was saying,
So can you
can
mute your
people
Facebook
say
so we
that
don't get the
this
feedback
is
from there?
that's what I just realized. And because of that, hold on, I'm trying to start your video. Let me mute. Let me mute. What's happening here?
Even if you shut the browser down, your guys will still see it.
Alright, that's fine. Okay. Yes, as I was saying,
Can you mute your Facebook so we don't get the
this
feedback
is
from there?
that's what I just realized.
Okay, guys. Franklin is trying to sort out an issue from his end. He is going to end what he's doing on Facebook, and then we will continue with the conversation. Right, Christina, thank you. You can hear all of us. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Do bear with me.
Okay.
Franklin, if you just,
That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, I think so. Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. That's fine.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm going to ask some questions. I
Please
probably
do.
know a lot of the answers to what I'm about to ask you, but I'm asking those questions because that's the layperson's typical questions. I want people to understand what you do a little better. So, one of the things I hear a lot from people when I share publications of yours or on platforms that people share your content, people always ask, so is it his job to bash the government? And does he bash any particular government in preference to another? And I want to start the conversation from there. Frankly, for those who really don't understand what you're doing, take it from those angles and explain to us, what is it that you're doing?
Well, first of all, I don't understand the word bash. If probably within the circumstances, what I think we do is that we critique. Well, first of all, let me just say something else. By the way, you see, we did not set up the think tank to be praising government profusely. Not just government, by the way, but successive government, because we believe the government or governments have enough praise singers. They employ a lot of people to sing their praises. And any think tank or civil society actor or group that decides to keep showering praises on government would virtually find out that they will be rendered redundant within I mean in no time, right? But let me just say that look, what we do is to offer critique and in most cases, and if not always, provide alternatives. And so ask yourself, let me give you a few examples. Ask yourself, when the NDC government decided that they were going for a Chinese loan during Muhammad's time, and I think Setepa was the Minister of Finance, they wanted to get a loan from the Chinese in order to build some critical infrastructure. They said they were going for, in fact, the figures we started hearing initially were $13 billion. And we said, well, that's fine. But can your economy contain those figures? Those were the questions we started asking. Then it narrowed down to $3 billion from the Chinese Development Bank. Then we asked questions. What exactly is this amount going to be used for? They said they were going to do secondary industrial estates. They were going to do a number of things. In fact, they also suggested that they were going to invest in the microfinance enterprise and then also do the Atuabo gas pipe the plant, right? Then we started doing our analysis and said, look, knowing who the Chinese are and knowing how the Chinese Development Bank behaves, in fact, they are so stringent that they require their requirements are sometimes twice what the Western development banks would normally require. And so people have this notion that the Chinese are for the Christmas, and because they splurge around, they are very easy to get. It's very easy to get money from them. We thought otherwise because we studied the Chinese and it's their development programs across the world, and we've seen that a lot of African countries have learned the hard way, and we proffered a number of reasons why we thought that the Ghanaian government at the time needed to be very cautious and careful, and that if the projects they were going for, the loan, the project they were seeking the loan for, were not profitable and viable, the Chinese government was not going to fund it, and that the only viable project to be supported. I'm sure if you were listening in Ghana at the time, you would have realized that we were given all manner of names. Western propagandists, we were called CIA agents. We didn't like the Chinese. That was why we were trying to throw sand into the Gary of the NDC. We said, well, none of that really. But let's just watch and see. Eventually, when the money came, it was only for the very critical ones that we had actually analyzed and said those ones the Chinese were going to invest in, and it was their turbo gas pipeline. I don't know of any other project the Chinese Development Bank supported. In fact, there were a number of routes that were put together by the government at the time that the Chinese should fund. If you recall, to cut a long story short, towards the end of the administration of the NDC, I mean John Mohammed's administration, the Chinese had to openly write letters saying that they were not going to fund those roads because those roads were not viable and profitable. The very terminologies we had used. So were we prophets of doom? No. We had just served the country and the government at the time with knowledge across the world that look, with the Chinese, if you don't show that you have a million, they won't give you a billion. And if you don't show profitability and viability of projects, they probably wouldn't fund you, right? Because Liberia spent 6 years negotiating the loan for its some of its infrastructure projects, and we brought all of this evidence to bear, but nothing. But remember what happened. The second example quickly is Commander Sugar Factory. When the NDC decided they were going to re-establish the Commander Sugar Factory, we noted that all the conditions that were supposed to be present were not available. In fact, we managed to pull out the 1970, I think 73 World Bank analysis that suggested that to revive Commander, the country was going to need $90 million at the time. That was in the 70s. And that they needed not less than a thousand hectare land area for growing sugarcane to feed the plants. But guess what? My good friend Spielgarber thought otherwise, and the NDC thought otherwise. They colonized us. Well, Spiel didn't do that, but I remember my good friends in the NDC said we were apologists of capitalists, and so this was a social project. And we said, look, this type of project don't run on social capital; they run on expensive money. So they got about $30 million thereabouts, and then started off with 100 hectare sugarcane plantation. 1 month after the fanfare, everything came crumbling down. Were we prophets of doom? No. We had just served notice that there was available data and evidence that suggests that you don't do things that way, right? You fast forward to this administration. You recall that before they came into power, but for the providence and the insistence by Imani that look, the promise of one district, one factory should be anchored necessarily on private sector funding or private sector participation. They were not going to change that. The initial promise was, well, we are going to do one district, one factory, and it will be mostly state sponsored. It was the pressure that was brought to bear on them for them to clarify what the promise was. That made them even concede that, well, they were going to look at the private sector as well. But even then, we went further and argued that look, factories are not like toffees that you spread around everywhere, like kids wanting toffees. What exactly matters is that there must be the conditions that must be present in order to set up factories. We went further to suggest that agglomeration of factories, setting up factories when you have possibly the right sources of resources, well, raw material, and mostly, obviously, the human capital was probably much better than, and this was basic economics anyway, that we learned in school. But because it was a populist promise, everybody was expecting that every district was going to get a factory. As we speak, I don't think a third of the districts in this country are seeing any meaningful factories. If you ask the questions, they'll point to a juice factory, which is not bad. They'll point to one other factory, and I think about three or five that are possibly producing. We suggested that, look, already there was a program in place which was sponsored by SMIDO, the United Nations Industrial Organization. So the best thing to do is to look at the existing programs and partner entities that are already delivering results. And that way you'd have built critical capital. Because you see, when governments say they will do stuff, first of all, let's not forget they are not using their money.
Okay.
That is why we suggested that it's a need to partner private sector people who are scared of burning their capital in order to do this. We went further to bring a Japanese intellectual who came to tell us not too long ago, I think last year, in a seminar with the Japanese embassy, which we organized, that the lessons from the Southeast Asian countries is that you don't necessarily spread factories around. You can even agglomerate. In fact, make sure that you set up like industrial parks and all of that. And so there's so when we do these things, we are not bashing the government per se. We are only proving, showing alternatives as to the things that can easily be done, and we do not apologize for that at all. So if anybody believes that we bash them unnecessarily, well, we are serving our country first. It's the politicians we are scared of. We love our country, and as I say again, it's the politicians we are always scared of, and it's the only reason why we do this work. Look, let me just add a final anecdote to the question you asked. In 2003, when I was starting my think tank, I, I traveled to Cologne, Gummersbach, to be precise, to go and learn about um, the ideas of basically starting a think tank, but also being schooled in the political and economic ideologies at the time. And I met a number of friends, about six of them, and almost every year since 2203, we try to, almost every year or two, we try to meet in one different country of the world, attending seminars and sharing ideas as to what has changed in our lives since we started, since we met. I can tell you that authoritatively that since that time, all I report is that we had another election. Anytime we met, we had another election. The last we met was in Switzerland 2 years ago when I was being honored for the work I've done since becoming being named one of the whatever students of the International Student Symposium by St. Gallen University. And when we met, the same guys were asking me, "Oh, did you just have another election?" I said, "Oh, we are on our way to have another election." But these guys always report, they always report progress, right? Look, the Singaporean guy reported that their country just returned a budget surplus of about $1,000. Everybody got $1,000 being paid back. I said, did you just say a budget surplus for you guys? We are trying to be like you guys, but I can bet you, even if we had a budget surplus in Ghana, we won't see a kobo of that, or a penny of that, or a dollar of that. Well, there may be other uses for it. Maybe organizing Kenke parties to celebrate that we had a budget surplus. Some of those things that we tend to do. So I'm telling you that in my life, I've been to close to 60 countries, and everything I've experienced, young people do, and all these friends that I've made, wonderful friends I've made, high and mighty. So it just makes me angry that these persons are not smarter than us anyway. And we have all the good things we've done in this country. Why is it that we are where we are? Why is our politics so sectarian and so divisive and it's not progressive? Why is it like that? When I see my friends, my colleagues' lives build up and my life is very decimated, well, it could certainly could have been better. But I shudder to think that if I were in the camp of the a third of the Ghanaians who are wretched and poor and excluded from the sports of the economy, where would my life actually be? What would it mean for my life? So I benchmark myself against those standards, not anybody, not MPP and DC standard. Those things are local standard, village champion type of things. We need to benchmark ourselves against international standards. Just as that's why when we are calling on the government to do things, we just don't set our sights on what did the NDC do. We want to benchmark you against what your peers are doing across the world. So if it is the competitiveness index report, economic competitiveness of the World Economic Forum, we need to see you doing well. If the doing business index, we don't want to see Ghana's fortunes plummet as it's been plummeting since the last administration left office. We don't want to see the index of corruption we're doing badly as we've been doing since Mahama left office. We don't want that. We want to be measured against global standards. So that is my worry. And if anybody calls that bashing, well, I'm not beginning to apologize for bashing anyway, because my level, as Shatawale will say, I know my level. My level is not this local champion village things that we do here. It is international, and so that is my vocation and my vocation really.
It's interesting. I don't know if you remember the last time we met and we were talking on the Nablus show. One of the questions I asked you is one I know a lot of people will still ask you. Frankly, why haven't you joined the party in looking to change things? Why have you chosen the think tank as your route to effect change?
There is a think tank leader who died not long ago. A good friend of mine, John Blundell, of the original Institute of Economic Affairs in the UK. By the way, the
Yeah.
Ghana one was, I mean, they appropriated the name. The original one is in the UK, and John Blundell had written the book. Actually, talking about ideas and why they matter. And I recall a quote he made in his book. His advice to young persons who were pursuing, who wanted a greater good. I mean, human flourishing and what have you. And he asked a question that I thought was profound. Actually, before his views, by the way, there was the view of what I call the what's his name? This economist called Frederick Hayek. Frederick Hayek was a Nobel laureate in 1974, I think, economic Nobel laureate in 1974. He is unashamedly capitalist, and he was advising one of his contemporaries who had wanted to go into politics at the time. I think it was Anthony Fisher, the founder of the IEA, original IEA in the UK, who had wanted to go into politics, and he asked him, what should I do? Because if I want to change the course of the world, because you don't forget the world, Second World War had just happened, and everybody was trying to ask questions: what would the world become? What would become of the world after the Second World War had ended? And Frederick Hayek was advising Anthony Fisher that maybe you should pursue business because when you pursue business and ideas, you are most likely to bring intellectuals together and you begin to start thinking about the causes of wealth and poverty. And through that, you'll be able to change the world. Anthony Fisher took the advice, used his money as a poultry farmer, set up a think tank, and in no time has assembled the most powerful leaders to be of the world. And Margaret Thatcher was one of them. And if you know Margaret Thatcher very well, Margaret Thatcher used to be a student of the IEA, attended their forums, and imbibed the ideas and led the revolution that changed the UK forever and actually changed the world because together with the US, she found an ally in Reagan. They changed the world, and what gave rise to that was the investment in ideas that Anthony Fisher was advised to do. And later on, John Blundell, who later became the IEA General Director in the UK, also advised in the book. I don't know, I think the book is just behind me. I'll pick it during the course of the conversation. And John Blundell said, look, eschew politics, pursue the power of ideas, and it's the only way you can build some critical, what's it called, change in your life. I'm sure the question you're asking me is, well, what happens if good men do not get into politics? And
Absolutely.
all they do is to sit around and make noise. In Ghanaian parlance, people say you are making noise. You are this. Well, instead of joining the party. Well, it's a legitimate question, and I've tried it. By the way, I tried sponsoring and supporting some of my good friends to get into politics. Some of them, a very minute number, are making a difference. Other people I supported to go into politics turn out to be worse than I thought. So maybe the next question you're asking me is, why don't you yourself jump into the fray?
That's exactly.
Um, I tell you, I won't survive because you'll be surrounded by a lot of hyenas to the extent that by the time you realize, um, you become something else you didn't wish to become. If I can find 10 of my kind, and I'm not saying my kind because I'm crazy, very, very crazy person who wants results in record time. If I can find 10 crazy people that I can work with, I have a few of them in Imani, by the way. If you know Imani, the principals, I have a lot. I have the Kofi Bento, Bryce Simmons, Salon Brantier, Patrick Stevenson, Tia Champon. If I get these persons, I'm sure that together we can change the course of this country's destiny. But are we going to get into politics? I'm not too sure we want to get into politics at all, because at the end of the day, the grounds are very slippery. It's a very dangerous, slippery ground. So we'll stay where we are, and we'll start like the during the NDC politics. They said people were what were they doing? Piecing in. We'll keep piecing in to the political parties, and I love it. You see, people do not know. People think that I'm going to car. The more you come after me, I'm like Donald Trump. The more you come after me, the more I actually build my arsenal. And so for me, I'm happy doing what I'm doing to the extent that a lot more people appreciate it, and to the extent that it's causing a lot of discomfort. I am so overjoyed when I see politicians running around trying to answer questions we've asked, because I find that joy. And I say this without any shame or without any apology, because as I told you, Amma, a while ago, my motivation is that I don't want to be comparing myself to local champions, because the world is now globalized. Look at what we are doing this afternoon. You are able to talk to me. I'm able to talk to you. You got me at the right time, by the way, and I'm happy to do this interview. But we are able to do this because you just showed me a streamer. I didn't even know there was a stream yet, right? I was going to do this on Zoom, but we are sharing ideas. I want this election to be defined by 8 persons who have superior ideas to push us into the next level. I don't want these elections to be just about airbuses and flying excavators, because that is what the politicians do. So we know that already. I mean, look, I always believe that politicians will definitely steal anyway. So there's some allowable amount of stealing that should be done. We agree. But when you've stolen, please focus on the larger picture of building a 21st century, 21st century country that everybody can aspire to, right? When I see people on Facebook, when I make a post and you have all kinds of characters talk, and I wonder, I said, is this the future they want to do for themselves? I shudder to think, and they think that sometimes coming after you personally, then they've achieved some result. Hello,
But
they haven't
that's
achieved
just
anything.
our culture. I think
Hello, they
that's
haven't achieved anything. So anyway, I hope that this conversation, as I'm also transmitting on my Facebook page, would elicit some a lot more responses. But hello, I am Frank, as my name is, and I don't care actually. I only care about building my country.
okay. It's interesting. You remember I asked you that question because it's one of the things I've struggled with a lot. A few weeks ago, Sam Jaka George was here with me. And when he was here, he knew which of my buttons he wanted to press. And it's always going to be those buttons. And that's why I wanted to pick it up with you as well. People always say that if you really want to change the game, you've got to be around the table to effect the change. And what you and I are doing.
Let me tell you something. In 2018, when I was in Switzerland, I was fortunate to meet what's his name again, Steve Forbes. Steve Forbes was in the audience when I was being honored. And I remember he came up to me and said, "Those were pretty interesting things you said out there." I was clear in my mind that it is better to pursue the path of ideas, because ideas actually change the world. Thomas Sowell, a very revered academic, Black American academic that I like to read, wrote in his book Knowledge and Decisions that look, um, ideas are everywhere, but it's important to authenticate these ideas, and through that, we would get knowledge. I think for me, the most important thing, if all the fight subsides, and I believe one day the fight with these political parties will subside, if it does subside, people will be looking for ideas. And trust me, in the hula baloo, all these parties talk to us. It's just that I can't share some of these conversations, but they talk to us. Right from the president to the vice president, they talk to us. Sometimes they request meetings and they even have to wait for you to come from wherever you have traveled to hold those meetings. And it's very useful. It means that they believe in the power of ideas. The finance minister has set up a committee. He's always asking for what views we have, not because we have the best ideas, but he believes that, look, it's important to reach out to persons. So the point I'm making is that at the end of the day, no matter what happens, ideas will still triumph. And when Steve Forbes wrote to me later back home, he said something that was profound, that he believes that the ideas I propose and propound would serve the country, Ghana, better. And Ghana's success one day would be long before I'm gone, maybe. People will point to the fact that there were persons who held their own and believe in the power of ideas. I still say that eschew politics. When I say eschew politics, I mean the very deviant nature of politics. Not everybody is political. I'm political. Of course, I am political. I'm interested in the politics of the country. That is why I'm able to say that a lot of the things politicians do are sloganeering. I am engaging in politics when I do that. You see, so politics is good, and I'm never tire. If you get the chance,
Okay. I think that call would have interrupted Franklin's access. Do bear with me. He will be back, and when he's back on, we will certainly resume. Um, Hi, I'm a Canada. Hi, hi, hi. It's good to see you.
to
Uh-oh.
represent
Franklin, can you hear me?
people.
That call has really messed your access. If I would take you out of the feed, can you just use the link and come back in so that we can hear you? Because it's just ruined the connectivity totally. Right, guys, you will have to bear with me. I will have to notify Franklin, let him know what to do. What is this with opaque and neutral? I don't get it. A lot of people have been making noise about opaque, opaque, opaque. Says that brother, it's good to see you. I've heard a lot of references to things being opaque, and I really don't understand why things are opaque or otherwise. Can you guys explain to me? Because I'm lost. Opaque, opaque. I don't get opaque. So please do me a favor. Explain this whole opaque thing to me. Let me catch up with it because there were people doing it at the beginning of the show, and I was wondering what it was. I thought maybe it was one of those groups who come with one word, but blessed beyond belief, you're doing it as well. So I know it's got to be something which is happening on the political terrain. So bring me up to speed, please. What is opaque, transparent, and translucent here? I don't get it. I really don't get it. So you guys do me that honor of explaining and help me to get back on track. I am still trying to find Franklin, and when Franklin is back, we will continue the conversation where we left off. But I am talking to Franklin Kujo from the think tank Imani. I want us all to understand Franklin's position. I am hoping that the questions I'm asking Franklin are questions that a lot of you want to ask him. I hope that his answers will help you understand the decision making people make vis-a-vis jumping into the thick of the political terrain or not. Blessed, I think you will understand my position a little better too during this interview, and certainly after the interview. What Franklin explains and Franklin's fear with being corrupted by the status quo, wanting to impact change without that risk of corruption, wanting to attack issues from a purist point of view, are all things I share. I share those views and no qualms about admitting that one. I have seen good people go into the terrain and become hyenas as well before my very eyes. And it was really good that he was saying that to you. But bear with me. I'm trying to find Franklin. He has disappeared from online. So I'm hoping that I would be able to find him here and I would be able to get across how to get back in. Hey, Frank. Hi. Could you use that link and just come back to the page? This is Anna. What's wrong? Come on, give me a break so I can get Franklin back on and we'll continue our conversation. Those of you who've only just arrived, the hyenas are many at the government agencies. None of it are. If you make that statement, it tells me that you don't understand our political terrain. The hyenas are more everywhere. Those of us here right now bashing the politicians and making noise are just as much of hyenas as those who are declared political. As a group of people, we don't do things for the sake of it. We do things for what we will get. And he is back. All right, you be patient a little bit whilst we get Franklin back on and we continue our conversation. Hi, Franklin. Network is so funny. Can you hear me, Franklin? All right, we'll be patient and see if it will buffer and we will be able to hear you. Franklin, when you can hear me, just say hi so I know you can hear me. I picked up some sound, but that's about it.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you clearly now. Franklin, having Franklin on is an absolute honor. He's a busy man. He's a very difficult one to pin. So I am over the moon that we've managed to get him and he will talk to us. I think that talking to people like Franklin is absolutely critical right now because he is one who understands the political terrain a little better than the average person because he actually engages with successive governments when they are on and he gets to hear the insider discussions more than you and I do. He knows the politicians better than we do. And so his perspective might be influential in getting us to clarify, crystallize our ideas about what politicians do, don't do, believe, don't believe, and so on. We will have to be patient because, as you can see, there's a network access issue. He's on, but I can't see him. I only heard him very briefly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Franklin?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fabulous. Let's continue. So I was asking you questions about the choices you've made. And I'm hoping that the audience listening to your train of thought will understand why different people make alternative choices when you want to effect change. So you've elected to make change from a distance, not going into the political terrain directly, but you've chosen to critique the politicians. You've chosen to be the rod bearer for the politicians, making yourself quite unpopular in the process. And people have always asked, Franklin, what is in it for you? Franklin, who pays you to do this?
Well, that's a good question. Like I said, our services to the country and not to any individual politician. As to who pays us, we have a legion of persons who have supported our work, who continue to support our work. I shared a couple of them, I think yesterday or two, and this have always been on our website, by the way. So I wonder how people normally do not even get to understand this thing. So one of them is the Atlas Economic Research Foundation. Now, the Atlas Research Economic Research Foundation was set up by Anthony Fisher, who I mentioned not long ago. He set it up in the States, but there's a UK version as well. And they support us. In fact, we are currently undertaking a project called Global Voices of Trade, trying to understand the dynamics within Africa when it comes to trade relations, trade barriers, and what have you, So Atlas is supporting us in that regard. We currently are trying to look at land reform as well, and Atlas is equally supporting us in that regard as well. We are working on what's it called? We are working with UNICEF. UNICEF is supporting us to do some work on um, the excluded, and the marginalized in society. So we are talking about the women who break their backs and children who are left to the ravages of the harsh economic reality. We've been supported by the Netherlands Embassy. In fact, we just concluded that work with the Netherlands Embassy, where we are looking at the value chain in the cocoa sector. We did an extensive cocoa value chain analysis. This we told Cocoa Board, by the way, because we did it with Cocoa Board. Um, we did also the understanding decentralization, the management and the challenges of decentralization. The Netherlands Embassy again supported us. The Swiss Embassy supported us in doing what they call the Inspirational Public Sector Leadership Awards. BUSAC, the Business Sector Advocacy Challenge, supported us to undertake a local content policy analysis for 5 countries in 8 sectors of the economy. We worked with an Italian think tank called FIM that supported us to do analysis on the gas pricing the gas right for the country. Star Ghana Foundation has supported us to do work on constituency demarcation. You remember, anytime there are elections, before
Yeah.
elections, after elections, they all do this constituency demarcation. The World Bank has supported us to undertake a much broader Africa-wide assessment of the Africa policies that would ensure Africa's next growth. And I think I shared not long ago on the Facebook social media recommendation that if a former World Bank director, Ishak Dewan, had written in our honor, that they gave us a lot of work to do, and we did it with stellar results. So it's legion. There have been individuals who have supported us as well. I recall that in not long ago when I did an article for the Wall Street Journal, an American businessman supported with $10,000. I have actually further supported the think tank with $20,000. Right? He flew me. I met him in Philadelphia in 2007, and we discussed business. In fact, I even managed to get him to invest in Guinness Ghana here. He had wanted to invest in Data Bank. So those are the levels within which we play. It's not this local champion thing where people think that you go around collecting money from people and all sort of thing. Of course, I must also admit it's difficult. It's difficult to run a think tank. As we speak, we are because of the pandemic, we are severely impaired, and we are making do with a lot of innovation and what have you. But if anybody wants to know who funds us, it's already on the website. And that story about being opaque is laughable because the gentleman who runs a one-man based organization just went to website. He didn't even consult anybody. And because he didn't find on the website mentioned these are the donors, he says that all these organizations are opaque. That is the basis for that crazy report. And it was
Oh,
even 2015. Yeah, it was even 2015, published in 2016. If you look at that website again, he did the 2018 one, and we were not mentioned because we already had the information there. It's not. But what is even funny is that people who are asking all these questions, they've not even contributed a CD, a password to Imani or any think tank. Even church, when they go, they don't even contribute properly. They wake up, wake up, they wake up and they come asking people. In fact, it's not annoying to think that people who are asking you, show me your financials. When you open and you say come and contribute, they'll not even contribute. If you are not contributing to me, why should I even mind you telling me I should show you my financial? Go and ask the government. You pay taxes to the government. That is why we ask the government to show us what they do. Nobody in government pays money to us. And in fact, until any Ghanaian pays money to us directly, as in supporting it directly, is the only day they will have our financials. Why should I? Why? So that you go and read it and write an exam with it or what? And be given a degree. A
you know,
buffet.
let me take you from a buffet for 2 seconds. You know, funny, when I listen to what you described, and I know you quite well. What strikes me is that you have understood international relations. You understand the principle of bidding for funds, of soliciting for funds from appropriate bodies, getting access without necessarily depending on individuals. And it's one of the things that as a community we are really bad at. And I think it's one of the things that could be a really good legacy project for you, frankly, if you would take on a few mentees and you would train people and you would put material out there about how people could bid two sources of funds and use it for community good.
Hmm.
That's
Well,
the right
if,
statement.
again, a lot of people do not know this about Imani, but I think about 3 or 4 times we've held seminars in this country together with our partners from Atlas, and we've run courses on how to raise funding, how to attract funding. We selected people from not just Ghana but across Africa to come and learn the steps in setting up think tanks, organizations, NGOs, and how to attract funding. In fact, there are a lot of resources on Atlas's website on doing this as well. So we have actually been mentoring a lot of people. And I can tell you that since we started Imani, we've had a number of workshops across about 8 African countries, and through that we've helped people set up think tanks in these countries as well. So we've been mentoring people across the continent. But of course, we normally don't trumpet that, but we mentor them through our wing, which used to be the Students and Young African Liberty Academy. So we do this. We completed the last one in Kenya last year. This year we were supposed to do it here as well, but for the pandemic, we had to hold a virtual forum of Africa-wide, what's it called, sub forum. Otherwise, we would have held it physically in Ghana, and it would have been at La Palm as we did in 4 years ago. So we do this as well. But I hear you. What I think we should do is to monetize it. I think that's the point because people need to pay to learn how
Now
to.
you are talking my language. Yes, sir.
Because
Of
you
course.
see, we've been doing this work for free for a very long time. I keep telling people that about 70% of the work we do. Maybe that's why people ask us who pays us, because you see, they can't just believe that except of people who sit around and be motivated to go after the EC, go after the Ministry of Communication, go after the Ministry of whatever, any ministry that is in our pathway. They don't understand it. They are like, how? But we are motivated beyond just the money. That's what people ought to understand. And so 70% of the work we do is typically not funded. But as I told you a while ago, Amma, it is motivated by the fact that amongst the principles of Imani, very well exposed people, very well traveled, and Bright, for instance, we used to compete as to the number of countries we've been to and the people in our circles. I think he's now around 80 countries and over. I'm still stuck at 62 or so. And I'm telling you, it is because we've seen so much, and that is what motivates us to go after every silly thing somebody throws at us. In fact, we sit around and say, what is this person saying? But this is not what we had in this country. This is not what we had there. But you are right. It's time to monetize some of this expertise. And we truly, 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 we have to start monetizing. I'm sure when we start asking people to pay money for something, they say, they are broke. They are looking for money.
It's fine. Let them say you are broke. I mean, it's one of the things that I'm preaching to everybody else because I think when you have your own sustainable sources, it allows
Yeah.
you to be a little bit more independent of thoughts. Because
Oh,
some of the
yes.
organizations who fund also have their ulterior motives sometimes for funding.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. There's no organization. Every organization has interest. But in my line of work, almost every organization that has funded us actually believe, in fact, at the core of their belief is that if the country does well, their country's investors would make money and they come and invest in the country.
Yeah.
That dawned on me when this gentleman called Sean Filer, when I wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal, which was published in all the 3 versions, by the way, sent me an email. I was in my hotel room in Hong Kong when I got the email. How can I support your work? I like the ideas espoused in the article I read. And it was sending a $10,000 check. And I asked later, 3 years later, when I asked him why he was investing in money, he said, look, The ideas you espoused, I believe if the world leaders listen to it, the world would be a much fairer place for business. And eventually I got him to invest in Kenneth Ghana. Can you imagine? So people like that have a much longer, you see, they see the future. Whereas our politicians see aboboya, excavators, and all kinds of things. That's what they see. Immediate gratification.
But
Somebody
this is
so when
in this
so
trouble.
so so when somebody sees that very much into the future, in fact, I'm reading the book by Joseph Nye called Soft Power, and he taught me a course in Harvard when I was doing a global public policy program there. He says, "Look, was it no David Gagan as well, who had actually advised about 4 or 5 American presidents. He taught me a course in global leadership at Harvard. He was talking about this man who was impeached, the American president who was impeached in the 70s, Nixon.
Yeah.
He said there was one quality that Nixon possessed. Nixon, if you're having a conversation in Nixon, he said Nixon foresaw 2020 at the time that many American politicians were not seeing. Those are the kinds of politicians that I want to bet. But Nixon did that because Nixon had read far and wide, understood ideas, and those are the sort of leadership that we require for building a country, really. So that is our only motivation. How can we birth visionary leaders? I wish, and I think our politicians currently are tired and too old. They don't have ideas any longer. And so maybe I'm listening to you asking, how do we get people to get into politics? Those who have fresh ideas.
Now we
I'm
are.
ready. Yeah, maybe I won't get into it. I'm ready to support young people to get into politics. By the way, who will do a different kind of politics, and that's why we are giving the platform to independent candidates very soon, in about 2.5 weeks, to have a debate so that we can see fresh ideas. Fresh ideas. Because I saw some of the candidates, I've interacted with them, interesting, beautiful ideas that they have. But you see, they are not your typical people who are hailed and praised. Obo, JM Bo, Nana Bo, and then, like
Where
Rollins would say, fan full respect.
you are going there. So let's talk. I mean, somebody was asking, Bless was asking about the independents. I've been engaging with them on the platform for maybe 2.5, 3 months now. And a lot of them have been here quite repeatedly talking ideas, and we bounced ideas with them for a while. And I am delighted that you are taking them on, because I think you would give them bigger exposure, you will bring experience, great. But I put out a video this morning, and I think a lot of people misunderstood that video. But that video really was because I am sick and tired of people bashing the politicians, telling them that they want us to hail them. But the very people who are complaining about the politicians wanting to be hailed also have an entourage behind them, hailing them, screaming. And I looked about 3 or 4 videos yesterday, and I realized, you know what, this is not different from what we are complaining about. It's not different whatsoever. Anyway, Franklin, so
Yes.
if I want to be mentored by Franklin to go into politics, how would that work?
Well, I'll start off by giving you a set of books to read.
Please give me titles.
Um, okay. Well, first of all, I'll give you the book that I've read that changed my worldview about the ideas and how we should envision, we should look at development. And that is Frederick Bastiat. In fact, I have the book right behind me. I actually wrote the introduction to his collection of essays. Frederick Bastiat was a very, sorry, but I'm going to mention some foreign guys, by the way.
Okay.
Some of the thinkers who come close to the thinking of Frederick Bastiat is Busia. Busia was an astonishing academic, and he was a thorough libertarian, I think. I've never seen his kind ever since Ghana's creation. Maybe Nkrumah obviously is the other touring character, but Busia comes close to the character of Frederick Bastiat. Frederick Bastiat lived between 1801 and 1850 in France. And he was an accomplished journalist, economist, and academic. And he's famously remembered for what's called the broken window fallacy. That when you throw a stone at the window and it breaks, you'd have created a job for the glass man, forgetting that the person whose window you've broken would have to spend money to fix it as well. So he talks about the famous principle: what is sin and what is not sin. What is sin is that, oh, you have created a job for the glass man, but what is not sin is that the baker whose window you broke would have to find additional resources to be able to fix that window. You know, and Frederick Bastiat speaks to me in such a way that I tend to understand why we pass laws that are plunderous laws, laws that can be used to plunder. Any law can be passed. You could pass a law, you can use to plunder. I consider the Supreme Court decision when the court case against the birth certificate as a very plunderous law. Plunderous. Because Frederick Bastiat is the typical character who says that, look, if you want people to, you can motivate a set of people to pass laws, and they can even ask, as happened in France. He was just doing a metaphoric. He was being metaphorical and satirical. Candlestick makers in France in the 19th century were asking the French Parliament to pass a law to ban the sun from melting candlesticks. But you see, the law was eventually passed. It was a stupid law, but it was passed nonetheless. In his satirical nature, he says the law was passed. And was that law a just law? It was a stupid law. It was a plunderous law. People were going to be paid to pass such a law. Do you understand? So you have a typical Frederick Bastiat who writes tomes about his works. Of course, I can also mention Frederick Hayek. Frederick Hayek he's a very technical writer.
1 second. What was
Exceedingly,
the title for Frederick Bastiat's book?
Frederick Bastiat is, well, there are a number. The Law. His famous book is The Law.
The
If you
law.
Google it, you find it. I think it's PDF. It's all over the place. I
Oh,
can point to you the works of Frederick Hayek as well. Hayek was an Austrian. Frederick Frederic Bastiat is French. But Friedrich von Hayek was part of the Austrian School of Economics. As I said, he was a Nobel laureate in economics in 74. Some other individual I've forgotten. But in 19, he'd written the book called The Road to Serfdom. The Road to
yeah.
Serfdom. Serfdom as in slavery. Serfdom. And he had written this book in 1945 and I think 46 or so, and it was published by the New York Times in 1948 thereabouts. In fact, that was the publication Anthony Fisher saw, and then found Hayek and asked him what would become of the world, because he's written a book which says that, look, again, he talks about the searchers, and when he talks about planners, that there's no single group of people who have ideas unto themselves. If whether they are the set of the Politburo as in China or even in politics, there's no way they have no knowledge of knowing all everything within the economic and political phenomena, except when they have carefully studied all forms of ideas, really. And ideas actually emanate from the bottom and not from the top down. So he talks about central planners versus, he calls them, I've forgotten the word he gives them, but central planners. In fact, it is William Eastley, who, a very interesting economics, who's still alive, who actually appropriates the thinking of Frederick Hayek to say that there are searchers and planners in this world. Searchers actually go for solutions, problems, looking for solutions to problems. Planners sit and think about how to plan people's lives. That is how come most of the international goals fail to be achieved. Well, the Millennium Development Goals, SDGs, they only fail mostly because they are planned by a set of people who sit around and think this is the way the world should work. When it's an actual fact, it should be coming from the bottom up. So, the political economy of ideas by Frederick Bastiat, Frederick Hayek, who has written a book called The Constitution of Liberty as well, which another powerful book is written. It's a technical book, but it's very well, it could be easily read. Um, One of my greatest idols is Thomas Sowell. As I mentioned not long ago, He just turned 80 years not long ago. Is he 80 or 90? I think last 2 weeks ago he turned 80 or so, and he's still writing. He just completed his book on the charter schools in the United States, where he makes a fascinating discovery of how um, minority groups are well educated in private schools, charter schools that are funded by the state, far more educated than public schools that tend to get a lot more money than charter schools. So you have Thomas Sowell. Um, I've just lost count. Then there's Peter Barr, a development economist, who actually studied West African economics. He studied the cocoa industry in West Africa, and found out that cocoa was better sold to anybody who wanted to buy, rather than set up all these marketing boards that tend to not necessarily deceive farmers, but actually do not give farmers their due. So Peter Barr, the late Peter Barr, is also a very good guy to look at. Deepak Lal is an Indian economist, a very well-known development economist, by the way, who had written tomes. Of course, I cannot forget Paul Collier. Paul Collier is also one interesting academic who has written about the bottom billion. I think if I got the title right, the bottom billion, basically saying promoting ideas as to how to unleash the potential of the bottom billion, or development in such a way that the bottom billion will be brought into the fray of development. Finally, because I've lost count of the number of books I've read, I'd like to mention Hernando de Soto, a Peruvian economist who I believe should have been named the Nobel laureate economist by now. Peruvian economist who wrote a book called The Mystery of Capital: Why Capitalism Triumphs in the West and Fails Everywhere Else. I read that book about 15 years ago. Um, and that book spoke to me and spoke to how development ought to be done in the developing world. Hernando de Soto had calculated the wealth of the developing world and estimated it at almost 9 trillion US dollars. And he says that most of these assets the poor have are debt capital. They are debt capital, and there's a need to brief into this capital. What is it called? Titles that could be given some fresh lease of life, so that poor people can use their assets to raise money, um, borrow money, and invest in other ideas. Are you still there? Hello?
I am definitely here. I lost that
Right.
second.
So that's it. In fact, if you go on to Econ Library, Econ Lib, ECONLIB, econlib.org, you get a lot of fascinating books and fascinating articles. Um, of course, I've stopped writing recently, but when I used to write, I'm sure I'm a rude writer. You can look for my articles in the Daily Telegraph of London, in the UK as well. The Rockstar Economist. Um, I think Rockstar Economics. If you Google my name and Rockstar Economics, I did that article and Bono read it. It was published at the Daily Telegraph, and it got me interviews around the world, 15 countries, by the way.
Oh,
You
wow.
can also read the article on the terms of trade, which was published concurrently in the three versions of the Wall Street Journal. I'm mentioning these articles because these are my most widely read articles that brought me a lot of fame and a lot of travel and a lot of money as well. Because it got me people paying for my ideas. It's not a Ghana here when you write and say, hey, it's MPP, hey, it's NDC. Most of them Mexican be. They be a muti no young for.
It's interesting. We are going to school here. Listen, what I've actually tried to do is share links to a few of the books Franklin have mentioned. And if you've
Oh,
not
beautiful.
read some of those books, it's difficult to actually make intelligent comments on certain aspects of our political engagement. You have to understand some underpinnings of certain things. And when you have that information, you can make informed contributions to national discourse. It's really important to me because at the moment, most people say that the people who are loudest in our political discourse have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Franklin, is that true or is that true?
Oh, it's just that I can't mention names, but anytime I because they'll come after me. And there are a lot of them. There are just too many. In fact, I believe now that there's an industry, motivated activists, party activists, who do not need to possess any certification of sensible analysis at all, and they are being recruited. In fact, they have become like mutants. They are germinating everywhere, and I think that, and I think that, but that is why I suspect when you ask me what should we do to salvage this country's fortunes, a part of me says get into politics. A part of me says no, be on the sidelines and use a sword and be cutting them down slowly. I believe both work.
Yeah.
You are right on the money. A lot of the people who make a lot of the noise are just motivated clowns. Sorry to say. But you see, they've dominated the airwaves, and all of a sudden, they are the ones who allow this. And sometimes they have a lot of money as well.
Not
So they're
sometimes.
able to, yeah, and so they're able to recruit a lot of, in fact, they recruit a lot of rather sensible people who have turned themselves into zombies. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's unfortunate by the way. So you are right. There are a lot of people who make a lot of noise but have fairly very little understanding of how the world works, and their immediate environment is their party base, and they have no motivations to think otherwise. And it's a pity. It's a great pity,
And
really.
those guys, and those are not the only one. I mean, I decided to start this and to have these conversations, not necessarily because of those guys, but it was also the alternative of the people who are on social media who've amassed large followings, only have air between the ears and make a lot of noise about nothing. And I felt that there were too many people on the airwaves. Some of them are media houses, some of them are not. And it was very important that people like me turned up and started putting alternative content out there. And I'm very proud to see the change in dynamics. I mean, a lot of those characters are losing viewership now because people are beginning to see what quality content looks like. And people are beginning to move to places with quality content. Shouldn't that be what we do on the political terrain as well?
Well, Amma, I've got to tell you that in politics, in fact, was it Carl Polanyi? I've forgotten which of the cows, the Polanyis, by the way. One obviously is a centrist, the other is a leftist. I suspect, I've forgotten who it was, that said that in politics, you need you need three people. You need
Okay.
you need the intelligent,
Yep.
you need the idiot, and then you need the semi idiot. In fact, the semi ones are the useful idiots. So look, the fact of the matter is that while we admit between you and myself, admit that we shouldn't give oxygen to the people who make a lot of noise and still have a lot of following. They spice the politics as well. They actually spice it up because you see, if they don't make those offensive offside commentary, you and myself would not. Um, you and myself would never get the opportunity to comment about them.
That's true.
So it's very interesting.
That's
Um, I'm seeing some comments on your. It's so funny. So Destiny guy suggesting that we are stupid politicians. Those are the type of characters we talk about. You see, they don't understand anything, and he thinks that our opposition to free SHS, people don't even know. Look, let me now tell you the story about free SHS.
yeah, please do.
When free SHS was being mooted, Nanado invited Imani, my Imani crew. We had breakfast over Kinky in his house. Frema Upare was there as well. And we talked about the policy. And eventually, this was way back before 2012. Eventually, there was a consortium that was formed to advise on the way forward. And so that consortium was formed outside of Imani, by the way. It was led by Kofi Bento. And they did a lot of good job. I was just superintending. Did an analysis, which is still there. We still have it in our arsenals here. If you ask the major people around Nanado, they'll tell you this for a fact. And we advised on what actually should be done. We advised that look, by the year 2020, the numbers we are seeing for free SHS was going to be the same number. In fact, we're off by just about 8% in terms of the numbers, but we did the analysis really well. And then we suggested that, look, in order for, because you never know when resources will be impaired, like a pandemic has now happened. So almost all the resources that should go into free SHS, some of it will be impaired anyway, right? So allow those who can pay to pay,
Mm-hmm.
and allow those who cannot pay to be supported by those who can pay, right?
Exactly.
That is so when eventually free SHS was being talked about, even though we advised it, we still, because we advised it, that's why we were going on and on to say that the best way to do it is to allow for people who can pay to pay. We have never said anywhere that we never believed in free SHS. In fact, it's funny because we were the ones who advised it. How can we be against it? We were only against the mode by which it was being implemented. And people who do not know this story, they should go and ask Nanado, President Nanado. People do not know we have a personal relationship. I've shared the things he said about me in 2017, that he thought I was the most significant person in the country. I'll share that with you, Amma, in a couple of minutes. I quoted him verbatim. He had attended a friend's birthday and he was being introduced as the most significant person. I, for a moment, I thought he was always making, cracking the joke, but he said so. So the relationship I have with President Nanado dates back while he was in opposition. And we
Mm.
advised on free SHS. We can never be against something we advise. All we said was that the mode in which it was going to be implemented may become problematic in the future if we don't have money. If for that certain finance minister came around later to say that he believes that people who can afford to pay. So people who do not know, those ignorant people who think that all we do is just sit around and oppose things. We actually are in the midst of also advising. I can share a number of things we've advised this government quietly that they are doing that people do not even know about. That is why we are motivated at the same time to go after certain decisions when they don't go well. Mm. That,
Right. So some people are finding their own levels. I mean, I'm still trying to work out which of the idiots am I. Am I a useful one or am I just an ordinary one?
let me tell you where the terminology useful idiot came. And I've seen that Glory write useful idiot and he's laughing. That reminds me of his former assistant headmaster who called the student purposeless dust. Well, President Mahama called us critics purposeless lamentators, by the way. So if that makes you in perfect company, that's good to know. Look, useful idiot was a term coined for academics from the West who were deceived by the idea of the Soviet Union, right?
Yeah.
The Soviet Union, and were invited by the Soviet Union to come and see how nice things were, and somehow subconsciously they also accepted that everything was very good in the Soviet Union until the Soviet Union collapsed. That's when the story was told. So they said that they considered themselves useful idiots because while they were very academic and knowledgeable, they allowed themselves to be used. That's where the terms useful idiot came from. I got to listen to a lot of BBC. I heard that from the BBC, one of the documentaries I like to listen to on the BBC. By the way, that's the story of the useful idiot. You are not a useful idiot, by the way, Amma, because you know what's up.
I don't.
Um, no,
Sometimes I
you
don't.
do. No,
Sometimes
you
I
do.
don't. There are times these
Well,
days you sit down and you
oh,
wonder.
well, you see, that is why I say that when you ask the question as to are the position are things not shifting from people who do not say anything sensible to those who appear to be saying things sensible, and I told you that those who are not saying sensible things have money to recruit people who are fairly sensible, and they become useful idiots
Mm,
because those persons subconsciously do not know that they're actually legitimizing these idiots.
yeah.
So they have become useful idiots. In any case, uh, somebody is cracking me up.
Oh, she's a
Anyway,
she's crazy. Ignore her. Just
no,
ignore.
I know. No, I know. So my point is, look, you are not one,
Hmm.
but you certainly are. Through this conversation, you clearly are not, and you've never been. The point is that you ask yourself, you let me share the story of the person who is in who thinks who believes it probably thought it was in an asylum. Oh, there's a movie I watched with Bright and Kofi recently in Kumasi when we went to petitioning the Asantuma Council. For the night before, we didn't do anything. We only watched a video. We only watched a film, and that film was titled come on. That's no, I've forgotten what the film is, but I'll tell you what the storyline is.
Yeah,
So there's
please.
this guy. This guy is this guy is Leonardo DiCaprio, right?
Yeah.
He's a star of the movie, and he had lost. I think the wife killed their child, and because of that, he became very delusional, and it became a mental case. And he believed that people were doing things against him in the
Mm,
world. I remember the title of the movie. He believed that people were doing things, a lot of things against him, and it was being obviously acted on. Everything he was taken into a place like an asylum where everybody there, and it appeared as if he was a only sensible person, and everything he was saying, everything he was doing and saying was being acted right before his eyes until eventually at the last ending, when the movie was going to end, I think it was Ben Foster who was the other character he was actually the cast as the psychiatrist, and Leonardo was then actually Leonardo was told eventually that everything he has been thinking about were hallucinations, things that he was just hallucinating about, and that it was depicting exactly how he expected his life to be,
mm,
and he thought that everybody in the asylum was stupid, but not quite the case. He was actually the man in the mirror, who was actually the madman. Sometimes we question ourselves, we question our own sanity.
we do.
And sometimes you begin to ask yourself, am I the one that is mad or stupid? Am I the only person seeing this thing as crazy? But I'm a fact, I'm not. I'm not. And that is why sometimes you find us getting very activist and emotional about certain subjects as well. Because we ask ourselves, are we in an asylum? Are we the ones administering medicines? Or we are being administered, and so you are not a useful idiot. Neither are you. You are just questioning your own sanity.
You do. You do. But Franklin, I know I've taken a little bit more than I promised I would. And in fact, I would like to tempt you to come again sometime soon. But before we leave, let me ask you a question. So, a group of girls and I have started a project, and it's the Women Activist Alliance. We are tired of people telling us the women are not activists enough. Women are not proactive enough. I am sick and tired of people wanting to find subservient positions for women in politics. Because I'm a woman. I clearly am a woman. I don't think there are many men who can fairly say that they are more intelligent than I am. And I'm still a woman. And I think it's very unfortunate that in our political terrain, people still think that our contribution is it should be subsequent to what the men do, that the women take these anchor positions and we shut up and let men make better decisions. And I'm looking for women who would be brave enough and prepared enough and skilled enough and schooled enough make a very visible claim for political, especially parliamentary positions, maybe 2024 onwards. Now, if we work on a project like that and we want to tempt you to make a contribution towards that project, might we be mad or might there be leeway to make that happen? We're looking for mentors for women who want to do this right.
Well, I mean, look, we did a study about women in governance about 4 years ago, and we found out that less than 11%, almost 11% of women actually make it into our political structures, basically in our governance. And indeed, if you look at the data clearly, Ghana's position on the Interparliamentary Union, I think, is about 150 when it comes to women representation in parliament. So we are not doing well at all on that front. And I've been on record. In fact, there's a video of me that was streamed to business leaders and politicians and students in Switzerland 2 years ago, which of course I mentioned that Steve Foss was part of, the Swiss president was part of it, by the way. In that video, you should look for it. You should look for it. In
I
that
will.
video, I said it was purposely made for me from a videographer came all the way from Switzerland to do that. And I said something that in my line of experience, women are far smarter than men. Men are nasty. Men are disorganized, and in fact, there's a meme that is shared about how the world has responded to the pandemic. If you see, it's only women who have done better than men. So men are basically disorganized and what have you. So I've never tired to say that I believe in the cause. The way I would like to support you would be through ideas, and I suspect that maybe doing an analysis on women in how women tend to be excluded from the economics of, I mean, basically how they are marginalized in terms of the inequalities that they face in terms of access to wealth, access to agriculture, access to land. Those ones definitely there's a lot of data I can help you with. And so yes, the answer is yes.
That would be great. Frankly, that would be amazing because yes, I want people to make legitimate claims. I don't want people to go into things naively. And yes, blessed people need 4 years, in my view, to actually strategize and prepare so that you launch a legitimate claim. I'm not looking for just going to make noise, waste money and time, get kicked into the curb and back. I actually want those women to go for some of the big, big seats. I've said it on record many times. There are some people who fall in your usual idiot category who are noisemakers in our community, and I really want to take some of those people on. I want to use a few of those seats to more credible people. Also, as a warning to the rest of them to adjust behavior. That's the way I see things. So, frankly, I will go and I will go think about what we might need a little better. I'll be back in touch so that we can pick your brains. But yeah, any publications you have, any reading material you have in that area would be very, very helpful to start with.
I have a couple of books to give away. In fact, I used to give a lot of books away not long ago. I suspect there's a few titles, but I'd rather send you links to the title because some of them are PDF. In fact, there's a book you should look for and let everybody also search for it. Um, what you should know, what everyone should know about economics. What everyone should know about economics. I think that's the title, but it's a small book written by one of my favorite think tank leaders. It's the Fraser Institute, by the way. Once you type in Fraser Institute, Fraser, the Fraser Institute, the authors will come. I think James Guatney, and then I've forgotten the other author's name. It's a fairly small book, and people can read it and get used to just making logical reasoning here and there, and it will help.
What everyone should know about economics. I am trying to find a link, and if I do find a link,
What?
hopefully, I will post it for
Yeah.
you.
What everyone should know about economics and prosperity, I think that's the title, something like that.
Yes, it's the St. Martin's Press book, right?
There have been a number of publishing houses, but if you could read the title out and the writers, it would be useful.
Okay, let's see. I will click on it and I will tell you in a minute. Right, so it's common sense economics, what everyone should know about wealth and prosperity. James D.
What's
Watney.
me? Yeah,
Yeah, it's
common sense
okay.
economics. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
that's the one. I will post the link for those of you who are interested in checking those books out. Very important that when these links are shared, you actually do take an interest and you read. When you read some of these things, you will understand things a bit more clearly so that whatever comments you make on the political terrain will be less of idiotic statements and more of informed statements, which is what we are looking for. Frankly, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I
This was
know,
this was not prepared, but you see, it turned out rather interesting. Like
but
they
this is
say, the best things are not the ones we prepare for, right?
no, I don't scripts. I can't
Except,
even.
yeah. I'm encouraged. I'm grateful for the conversation, and I'm sure that the links will be shared. I'll make sure I share it to a maximum number of people to see, and then we can have the conversation once more.
Let's speak soon. Guys, thank you very much for joining, and join me in thanking Franklin. I hope that those of you who've been here and you managed to put your biases to one side and listen, actually understand the wealth of information he has, the perspectives he brings to the table, and he's definitely an asset we should all listen to more often. So whenever he has time, I would love to pick his brains. And thank you, Franklin. It's my honor. Absolute
It's
honor. I will speak to you on the next
grateful. Thank
time.
you. Cheers. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Yes, that was Franklin, Miss Franklin Kujo. I think a lot of you do know Imani, the think tank. I think a lot of us misunderstand what they do. A lot of us are unaware of the depth of what he does. These are assets, national assets that we shouldn't take for granted. We should definitely harness as much of these knowledgeable brains as we can. We should learn from the terrain as much as we do. So those of you who watch me, I bring you characters, and I bring you characters who will push your boundaries. I bring characters who will inform your understanding. I bring you characters who will shape the way your thoughts should be. You agree with Nanado, he's an asset. There is no arguing that one. When was it? The first time I came across Franklin was when he first started Imani. Both of us, that there wasn't even a TV station then. It was just City FM, and it was Ben Avler's show in the morning, the breakfast show. We were there talking education. He stood firm on certain things. He hasn't wavered. Next time, I would like to discuss maybe education and health and stuff like that. But for the first time, I just wanted you to hear his thoughts and the things that inform his thoughts and his positions. And yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your questions. Thank you for sharing the feed. If you've not shared the feed, can you please put it out on your platforms for me? Can you put it on your networks for me? Can you get the information to as many people as we can? Because there is still too much ignorance on our terrain, really, too much ignorance. Kwame Kodria, you are very kind. Thank you. I am very, very grateful. Alex Stacy, thank you. You followed me a few times, but you're getting addictive because of, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. We need to get information, and then we use that information to mold a better country, Ghana, because the way it is at the moment and the forecasts for the next few years are not great. We cannot let it continue the way it is. Things have to change. And in order for things have to change, thinking will have to change first. And that's what I'm hoping to push. So I shall see you guys, the rest of you, on the late night show. We will have Wabadana later. On this platform, we do intelligent discussions, and then we do crazy discussions, and we do just utter madness as well, because it's life. And confident ignorance is too common amongst us. And until we learn to position ourselves to be able to contend with those people and to contend them from an intellectual point of view, we will be exactly where we are, if not worse. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing, and catch you soon. Good evening, everybody.